The French resistance began almost immediately after Germany invaded France in May 1940. It wasn't a single group, but a network of thousands of fighters, spies, and sympathizers spread across cities and rural areas. They used sabotage as their main weapon, blowing up railway lines, cutting telephone wires, and attacking Nazi supply depots. One of their most famous sabotage missions was in 1944, when they destroyed hundreds of trains to disrupt German reinforcements before and during the Allied D-Day landings in Normandy on June 6th. The resistance also gathered intelligence, secretly sending information about German troop movements to the Allies. They published underground newspapers to boost morale and expose Nazi lies. Women played a big role, often acting as couriers or spies because they were less likely to be suspected. The Nazis arrested and executed thousands of resistance members, but their efforts seriously weakened German control in France. The resistance even helped liberate Paris in August 1944 alongside Allied troops. The White Rose was a small but courageous group of university students based in Munich, Germany, who openly opposed Hitler's regime. It was founded in June 1942 by siblings Hans and Sophie Scholl, along with their friend Christoph Probst and their philosophy professor Kurt Huber. They wrote 6 anti-Nazi leaflets between June 1942 and February 1943, calling for passive resistance and warning about the horrors of the Nazi government, including the persecution of Jews. Their leaflets were secretly copied and distributed across Germany, reaching cities like Berlin, Hamburg, and Frankfurt. On February 18, 1943, Hans and Sophie were caught distributing leaflets at the University of Munich by the Gestapo. After a quick trial, they were executed by guillotine 4 days later. Their brave stand became a symbol of moral resistance inside Nazi Germany and inspired many after the war. By 1943, the Nazis had forced over 400,000 Jews into a tiny section of Warsaw, Poland, called the Warsaw Ghetto. Conditions were terrible: starvation, disease, and constant deportations to death camps like Treblinka. In April 1943, the Nazis began the final liquidation of the ghetto, but Jewish fighters organized an armed uprising to resist deportation. Led by the Jewish combat organization JUB, around 750 poorly armed fighters held out for nearly a month in close-quarter combat. Despite being vastly outnumbered and outgunned, they used guerrilla tactics, hiding in bunkers and sewers. The Nazis destroyed much of the ghetto with tanks and flamethrowers, killing thousands. But the uprising showed the world the courage and determination of Jewish resistance. It was the largest Jewish revolt during the Holocaust, and a powerful act of defiance against Nazi genocide. Norway was occupied by Germany in April 1940, and the Norwegian resistance began almost immediately. They specialized in sabotage and intelligence. One of their most famous missions was the sabotage of the Norsk hydro heavy water plant at Vemork. The Nazis were trying to develop an atomic bomb and needed heavy water for their research. Between 1942 and 1943, Norwegian commandos trained in Britain parachuted into Norway to destroy the plant. The first mission in February 1943 involved blowing up the plant's production facilities. Another mission in November 1943 targeted a ferry carrying barrels of heavy water, sinking it in the Telemark region. These acts delayed Nazi nuclear research significantly. The resistance also sent vital intelligence to the Allies, including early warnings about German battleships. Many members risked their lives skiing through harsh winters to avoid capture. The Dutch resistance began soon after the German occupation of the Netherlands in May 1940. One of their earliest major actions was the February strike in 1941, when thousands of Dutch workers protested against the Nazi roundup of Jews in Amsterdam and other cities. Though the Nazis brutally suppressed the strike, it was one of the first public protests against Nazi persecution in Europe. The resistance also specialized in forging identity papers to help Jews and others avoid deportation. They set up safe houses for hiding people and smuggled information to the Allies. Dutch resistance fighters also sabotaged railways and factories that supported the German war effort. They worked closely with the Allies, passing on intelligence about German troop movements. Around 25,000 people were involved by the end of the war, many risking their lives to save thousands. After Italy's armistice with the Allies in September 1943, German troops quickly occupied much of northern Italy. This led to the rise of the Italian partisan movement, a mix of communists, socialists, and other anti-fascists. They operated in the mountains and cities, attacking German convoys, railway lines, and communication centers. One of the most famous partisan groups was the Garibaldi Brigades, named after the Italian revolutionary Giuseppe Garibaldi. They fought alongside Allied forces in the liberation of cities like Milan and Turin in 1945. On April 27, 1945, partisans captured Benito Mussolini while he was trying to escape to Switzerland. They executed him the next day. The Italian resistance had about 100,000 fighters by the end of the war, and their actions helped to push German forces out of Italy and restore democracy. Greece was invaded by Axis forces in 1941, and the Greek resistance quickly formed to fight back. There were several resistance groups, but two main ones were the National Liberation Front, EAM, and the National Republican Greek League, EDES. The resistance fighters mainly operated in the mountains, using guerrilla tactics against German troops and Italian occupiers. One of their biggest victories was in November 1942, when they blew up the Gorgopatamos Viaduct, a key railway bridge carrying German supplies. This mission was planned with help from British Special Operations Executive SOE agents. The Greek resistance also provided vital intelligence to the Allies and helped thousands escape capture. Their efforts seriously disrupted Axis supply lines, but political tensions between groups led to fighting after the war, sparking the Greek Civil War. The Yugoslav Partisans, led by Josip Broz Tito, formed in 1941 after Axis forces invaded Yugoslavia. Unlike other resistance groups, the partisans quickly grew into a large, well-organized army with a clear political goal of uniting the country under a socialist government. They fought German, Italian, and Croatian fascist forces across mountains, forests, and cities. Their most famous battle was the Battle of Sujecka in June 1943. Surrounded by more than 100,000 Axis troops, the partisans managed to break the encirclement after weeks of fierce fighting, despite heavy casualties. By 1944, they controlled large areas of Yugoslavia, setting up liberated zones and running their own government. Tito's partisans also cooperated with the Allies by coordinating attacks and sharing intelligence. After the war, Tito became president of the new Socialist Yugoslavia, which lasted until the 1990s.